Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. Happy Halloween. It is currently October 30th. It's a little past midnight, and we are on schedule, so at some point tomorrow I will be filming the Rakdos deck tech video, which is kind of like my big Halloween finale. That'll be fun. Gotta figure out what to do after that. I've only been planned up to the end of this month. But I thought it'd be fun to do my Golgari Deathtouch Snake Tribal deck. And so here we go. Green Satin Tower. Now I thought these were apple green, but actually I think these are like lime dragon shields, which show up way more vividly on camera. Live, these are a lot more pale, but I can see through the camera lens that these are vibrant. So I really have to talk about this deck. And, you know, I'm tired of apologizing for my decks and their sometimes janky status because I'm a casual player. This is going to feel really janky, and that's because I have not had the time and the finances to dedicate to this deck. This is one of my serious works in progress that I really have a lot of ideas for. I just haven't been able to realize them, and I'm not a proxy guy. I'm just not. Nothing against those who are. I'm just not. So I'm going to go through this deck list, but there's going to be a lot of, I want to run, I want to get, well, I'm going to upgrade, you know. So aside from the fact that this fit the theme of having a lot of snakes and a lot of scary stuff for Halloween, really, I was kind of nervous about even showing this deck, but I thought, it'll be fun. You know, and as it is, it's a fun little commander slinger. It likes to destroy things. Again, you know, the whole point of this deck is Death Touch. Pharika's probably not the best commander for it, but I like gods. For the record, I've got this. I cracked her after getting some packs after coming in second at a Journey into Nick's draft tournament. So. Thought she was really awesome. I love her. I like the ability too. So it's going to be fun. So starting with her, she's a god, she's indestructible, and she is an enchantment unless your devotion to black is less than 7. You know, devotion meaning the number of mana colored symbols, so she counts for 2 on her own. So she needs at least 3 more black and or green mana symbols, and then she's a 5/5 for 3. For 2, she exiles a card from any graveyard, and its owner puts a 1/1 black-green snake enchantment creature token with Death Touch onto the battlefield. What can I say? I have a soft spot for, you know, cool pantheons, and I just love the polytheistic ideas that Magic has. She's probably not the most ideal, and I guarantee she's not the most ideal. A lot of people will probably say Hepatra, Vizier of Poisons, is the best commander for that kind of deck. You know, I might make that switch at some point. So let's get to the mana base. Command Tower. Exotic Orchard. You know, staples. Blooming Marsh. You know, tapped and unleash control 2 or fewer lands. I actually like these things. Tainted Wood. You know, my deck's half black. This thing is always going to work. Original Torment, as always. Llanowar Wastes. You know, nice little pain land. Comes into play untapped. Woodland Cemetery. Again, a lot of people hate check lands. I honestly love them. Maybe it's just because I run more basics than your average person, but I swear by the check lands. Netherbloom Snarl. This isn't Necroblossom Snarl. This is an interesting little thing. Still fun, useful. Temple of Malady, Scrylands. So this began hyper casual and with a lot of cards just from the Theros sets that were just Pharika related. This one has a lot of functionality, but I'm not sure how many are still left in here, but there were a lot of not good cards that I just had to force into this deck because I loved the idea of making a Pharika themed deck. But I wanted to take it a little more seriously after the printing of some cards. Golgari Rob Farm, bouncing stuff. Animal Sanctuary. I actually think this is kind of fun and unexpected. It's just 1 land, and it taps for a colorless, so it's not too bad. You know, so putting counters on snakes. Field of Ruin, nuking somebody's unbasic, and I still get a basic out of it, you know. Witch's Clinic. I really like the idea of something with Death Touch suddenly gaining lifelink. You're going to see that as the deck progresses, which is Cottage. I need to find a spare Mortuary Mire lying around to add to this. But, you know, I love black cards that return stuff from the graveyard. Bajuka Bog, my eternal utility card. Again, my favorite target of Golgari Rot Farm. Castle Garenbrig. I really wanted like a Twilight Mire, you know, or Filterland, or Undergrowth Stadium, but, you know, I don't have a spare one of those. Definitely one of the first things I would consider trying to upgrade in terms of the mana base. Temple of the False God, you know, just more mana. Blighted Woodland, I like this thing. Probably should add like a Croson Verge or something like that. Evolving Wilds and Terramorphic Expanse, again, this deck has not had money put into it very much, so that's where we stand. Swamps, you know, you had your 8 Golgari deck. Swamps, 8 Golgari Forests, very beautiful, mushroom oriented. You know, not what you normally think of the Golgari. You think of, well, yeah, I'm not going to say it. On to the Plainswalkers. So, first Plainswalker, Vraska, Swarm's Eminence. When a creature you control with a Death Touch deals damage to a player or Plainswalker, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Yeesh, lost all that. You know, I love that. I love these static abilities of these War of the Spark Plainswalkers. The Assassin isn't that important, but still, it's nice if I want to use it. But mostly, it's the static ability. Because, you know, obviously I said this started out as Snake Tribal, but it's really slowly morphing into Death Touch. You know, just, you don't want to go creature to creature against this deck. Vraska, Golgari Queen. You know, sacrifice another permanent. If you do, gain a life and draw a card. Destroy non-land permanent with convert mana cost 3 or less. And, of course, the ultimate, even though I don't expect to get to it very often, the ultimate is, of course, the Phage Claws. Deal damage, lose game. You know, just, if I can get to it, it'll be fun. But mostly it's to destroy stuff with that middle ability. OG Vraska, Vraska the Unseen. You know, whenever a creature deals combat damage to Vraska, it gets nuked. Nice way of protecting itself. Destroying non-land permanent, always important. And of course, you know, three assassins with Pharika's or Phage's law written on it, so always down for that. Vraska the Scheming Gorgon, love that pirate art. Again, she's always ready to destroy creatures. You know, removal is very budget in this deck, something I wanted to upgrade. Again, just a lot of ways to just lose the game. And the idea, when people keep coming up against these Plainswalkers, they just get really frustrated. And eventually I can hit off one. I have won games off of that, you know, deal damage, lose game clause. Garruk, Apex Predator. Destroy another Plainswalker, that is so useful. And then putting a beast with Death Touch, like, that's the main thing I like to do with this thing. Occasionally I'll destroy creatures. I don't really care about the ultimate because I just want to keep making those beasts with Death Touch. I find swarming the board is just often the best thing. And there's some times where I'll lose a lot of life in this deck. So the destroy target creature gaining life equal to its toughness is not exactly a downside. All right, so even though, yes, this is mostly from, you know, the intention of being a Pharika theme deck, I honestly like this and the next card because, said Scorpion for the record, just 1-drops with Death Touch, just, they cause problems. They are just things that people hate to see. You know, people actually seem to resent the smaller stuff with Death Touch because it's just a little annoyance. And these things the damage will stack up with these things, and I love them. You know, just when I want stuff like Vraska's ability to just make stuff with Death Touch even stronger, especially when it's a 1/1. People aren't going to want to block a 1/1 with Death Touch with their 2/2 or 3/3 very often, so they'll often let the first bit of damage go through. So even though these were added when it was a budget idea, these things are still awesome. Moss Vipers, same deal, just another 1-drop with Death Touch, you know? in a lot of ways, this, you know, I see these as the things that Pharika is creating with her ability. Scourge Tribe Elder. There is still some Snake Tribal stuff in here that's probably going to get phased out as I upgrade the deck. Again, there are some glaring flaws with this deck, but it's because I haven't had the chance to really work on it, but I want to. You know, just a good utility card, but also in this deck, being a snake, you know, has its advantages. Flash and Death Touch. Two great combos. And for 2 mana, this is a great way to get rid of a blocker. This is practically a removal spell. Love it. Gifted Aetherborn. Death Touch and Lifelink. I utterly love this card. Probably my second favorite vampire, to be truthfully honest. You might guess what the first one is. But I like 2/3 for 2. Death Touch and Lifelink. Like, this is just an awesome card. You know. Yeah, my other favorite vampire's in here. Hepatra. She really might end up being the commander. Problem is, I just don't like putting things on. I don't like 1/1/1/1 counters on as a strategy versus, you know, just blowing them up. Also, she's just a 2/2 and she has to really deal damage, which I think is something that really bothers me because it's hard to get a creature like her without Death Touch through. You know, she's a 2/2 for 2, so she's going to get beaten up a lot. I think that was the real reason I went for Pharika. You know, Hepatra, she's just a little too fragile. Like, I'd want to put more Voltron protection, you know, Lightning Greaves, Swift of Boots, all that kind of stuff to keep her safe and get her unblockable, maybe, to like build this deck around her, and that's just not where I was going. Burnished Heart. You know, this deck has less lands than a lot of my decks because originally it's the average converted mana cost was lower. A lot of 3 drops. And then, you know, as I slowly worked on the deck, there's a lot of 6 drops now. Oops. Wasteland Scorpion again, something that's probably going to get replaced at some point. It's a cycling with Death Touch. But something nice to go to the graveyard if I absolutely have to for a card. Ophiomancer. You know, it's when I actually invested. This is not a cheap card, but when I finally bought this thing, that's when it was like, all right, I really do want to do something with this deck. But I like the idea of just always being able to get a snake if I don't have one. Sabertooth Cobra. The old poison counters. I considered Pit Scorpion. I really did. And Pit Scorpion might replace this thing. But, you know, just the idea that it's a threat most new players aren't familiar with. And I really like that it can really take people by surprise when they realize they have to deal with this thing. Skullwinder. You know, maybe the mutual effect is not the best, but, you know, especially as a cheaper drop, it's easier to get in the early game when I have something in the graveyard and my opponent doesn't, you know. Ronus the Indomitable, you know, Death Touch and Indestructible. Of course he was going to be in here. You know, can attack or block unless control power creature, another creature with power 4 or greater. That's not that hard in this deck, especially once you look at the curve of this deck. He was a later addition, again, when I really started investing in this deck, and he's a lot of fun. Isareth the Awakener. You know, she's got Death Touch, and I like the fact that she's attack trigger, not a damage trigger, so I can bring back stuff from the graveyard. I love Resurrection, and even though it's got this corpse counter stuff on it, it still works. Again, having it as an attack trigger is huge for me. Batman! Vampire Nighthawk. Flying, Death Touch, Lifelink. What can I say? Everything I want in this deck. Leyline Prowler. A 3-drop Death Touch, Lifelink, and if I need the mana, I need the mana. I love those 2 abilities stacked on top of each other, and that's just really, really strong here. Yay, Murderous Rider. You know, again, he's got Lifelink, and of course the Swift End Adventure. This has become one of my favorite cards in the game. and I try and fit into as many decks as I possibly can. Sachi and Suzuki, daughter and son of Seshiro, Jesus. Is it midnight or is it like 4 a.m.? So, there's a decent amount of snakes in this deck, but this is back when this was mostly a Pharika-inspired casual deck. I'm sure that I can find stuff to replace these two. Obviously, there's no real shaman, aside from themselves. Very little shaman, very little warrior payoffs for their other abilities. So these things just power snakes. Maybe Sachi has a better chance because she can at least tap herself for 2 green mana. Even though, whenever, Warrior's got Deathtouch. So, I mean, they're good enough right now. And sometimes their abilities do help out the snakes. Gunty! I like this guy because, just being able to cast stuff, but also, it's a nice little hindrance to my opponent. Gives me a little bit of information on them. And he's, of course, a legendary with Deathtouch. The newest person to make the list. Other tapped creatures you control have Deathtouch. Other untapped creatures you control have Hexproof. Interesting. Very interesting. I don't know how good in practice she's going to end up being. I don't really have anything. I don't have like a fight mechanic to take advantage of the Deathtouch ability. I'm actually wondering if she might have been better in a werewolf deck where I could, after they attack, I can still use them to fight. But, the Hexproof is just fine with me. And again, just, she's an interesting idea. If she doesn't quite fit the build, she might get cut, but I haven't played with her since adding her. Questing Beast. Again, so there were 2 cards that made me realize I want to upgrade this deck into a legit contender. And this was the second of those, and this was just... I fell in love with this card as soon as I heard about it. Vigilance, Deathtouch, Haste, can't be blocked by creatures power 2 or less. Combat damage, that would be dealt, can't be prevented. And then, it deals that much damage to Plainswalkers. Oof. This is a total package card. This is one of my favorite creatures in the game, and deciding to put it in this deck was a substantial moment. I could have put this in my Saskia deck, but I chose this deck, and that's really when I realized I want to turn this into something serious. Reaper of the Wilds. Nice, it can gain Deathtouch. There's a little tiny shred of Gorgon Tribal in here, not really. But, she can gain Deathtouch and Hexproof. Keepsake Gorgon. If I have to, the monstrosity can be okay, but she's still a nice blocker. She still has Deathtouch. She's not a bad card, but she's something that I can see me getting rid of as I take this deck more serious. Oran Frostfang. 10 creatures you control have Deathtouch. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Card draw can be a little bit of an issue in this deck. I never built in a sacrifice mechanic. So, sacrifice, draw cards. So, I wish I had. But just getting more cards is good. Ronus, God Eternal Ronus. Deathtouch, and he just doubles the power of each other creature, and they gain Vigilance. Ooh. Just coming in with a big swing. And then, he just never really truly goes away. And he's a 5/5 with Deathtouch for 5. Wormcoil Engine. I heard a lot of complaints at one point that everybody was forcing this and Steel Hellkite into every single deck because they were colorless and they were kind of OP. I made a distinct effort to keep them out of any decks they didn't belong in. This is a Deathtouch deck, so yeah. Love this thing. I had one, from the Commander Anthology. I knew I wanted to put it in this deck or my Saskia deck, and just like I said, the fact that I decided to take this seriously, This was one of the first includes. I love the fact that I get those worm tokens. And there's a couple of ways to bring stuff back from the dead. So if this comes back, you know, it just brings those 2 with it after it dies again. So it's just brutal. Xanthid Gorgon. I actually like this petrification counter stuff. I think it's really interesting. And it's a unique way to paralyze things without just removing them from the board where they can be resurrected or bounced or something like that. So I thought this was a really interesting idea. I think like concepts like that are really underrated, and I just always wanted to use it, and it has Death Touch, yay, but honestly, it's the ability. I always wanted to see how it would work in practice, and it works pretty good. Seshiro! Other snakes you have +2/+2, and whenever a snake deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Unlike her children, Seshiro does enough by herself to be justified. Like, again, card draw is nice, and snakes getting +2/+2. That is a much different ballgame. Nemesis of Mortals. You know, the monstrosity to make it bigger. It's a snake. It's a giant snake. It's from the casual days of this deck. It's a top curver, or it was a top curver when this was the most expensive card in the deck. So again, this one's probably on borrowed time in this deck. Hythonia the Cruel. You know, another card that just board wipes all non-Gorgons. I really like that ability. It's expensive, but it works, and I've done it, and it's really amazing to watch it happen because people don't actually think you're going to end up getting there. Then they leave it alone for a couple of turns, and then it happens. And again, Death Touch. Grave Titan. Another, just the number of 6-drops I threw in this deck when I decided to take it seriously. This was just, I love this thing. It's another one of my favorite cards in all of Magic. You know, yeah, there are Titans that are better, but just, I love playing black, so this is the Titan I usually go to. Massacre Worm! Love this thing. I know I keep saying that, but it's awesome. It's retroactively, I believe, become a Phyrexian, too. I might have to take out this and a couple of the other cards, Wormcoil Engine, all the stuff that's now Phyrexians, and make a Phyrexian deck with Yawgmoth as the Thrawn Physician as the commander. But just a nice thing to just hurt my opponents. Then just the lost life can really pile up. Just a nice card for this deck. Visara the Dreadful. She and the Avatar of Woe were unbelievable when I first got into the game. I saw her printed in Onslaught. But I remember that was back when Black had the huge caveat of destroys non-black creature. So stuff like Visara and Avatar of Woe, tap destroy creature. That was unreal. And I remember when I got one of these, I just felt so badass. Huh. They're having technical difficulties. That is so weird. It seems I am missing a card. Not just any card. Like the other big card I was going to wax poetically about. It's probably upstairs because I was just rearranging this deck. The last creature in the deck is Carnage Tyrant. Card I fell in love with in the previews. Basically, it's everything I say about Questing Beast except earlier in Ixalan. When I put Carnage Tyrant in here, it was because I just loved it as a monster for this deck. But it and Questing Beast, they were not cheap cards when I bought them. They were the turning point for this deck. Lingify! Again, I love the idea of finding alternate ways than just blowing stuff up and seeing what happens. I really enjoy this thing. Just a 0/4 Tree Folk. Necrogenesis, exile a creature from a graveyard, create a 1/1 sapperling. This is just nice to clear out the enemy graveyard and get some blockers. And again, with a lot of the things that give widespread death touch, man, Where's my archetype of... where's my archetype of finality? Oh, I put you in the enchantments. I was about to talk about this. So archetype finality, if there's a card that belongs in this deck more than ever, there we go. Just creatures you control have Death Touch. So again, just taking advantage of something like Necrogenesis, just 1/1s all over the place, and what few cards in this deck don't already have Death Touch, now gain Death Touch. And the ability to steal it from my opponents, which really helps with this. Giving my opponents an army of 1/1s that don't have Death Touch is really a groin punch. Grim Feast. Again, there are just ways that, I tend to take a lot of hits on the chin with this one, with this deck. I find myself barely surviving. So, life gain, especially at the, lose 1 life to gain a bunch of life whenever something dies. Death triggers are awesome in this deck. Deathbridge Chant. Is this too casual? I love this when it works, and I hate it when it sits in my hand. Witherbloom Command. I actually like this. Target player mills 3 cards, and then you return a land card from your graveyard to your hand. Destroy target non-creature, non-land permanent with value 2 or less. Target creature gets -3, -1. Or target opponent loses 2 life, and you gain 2 life. One of the few cards that's meant to be in this deck. Explore. If I can ramp out a little quicker, do it. I don't have a lot of the better cards in abundance, so, I don't have another Kodamas, otherwise it'd probably be in here. Treasured Find. I love Treasured Find for this deck. People hate watching me do it on a Wormcoil engine. Find and Finality. Return up to 2 creature cards from your graveyard to your hand, and you may put 2 +1/+1 counters on creature you control. Then all creatures get -4/-4. It's fun. Again, you guys know, I play with gods. I'm used to their weaknesses. So I love -/- as an attack to get rid of stuff like that, or untargetables, etc., indestructibles. Cultivate. Need that ramp. Pact of the Serpent. Yeah, this was a new one, and I just couldn't help myself. I like the idea of drawing more cards. So if I get a bunch of snake tokens, draw a bunch of cards, lose some life for it. And thematically, hey, snakes. Oblivion Strike. In Commander, as I kind of mentioned about the poison counters, you deal with stuff you don't see anymore. We don't really see protection from colors anymore, but this will get around, the protection from black stuff that happens. And also because it had no color, this used to be able to kill Emiria when she was, or Iona when she was legal. Casualties of War. So now you're going to see a lot of the problems. So there's what's in the deck versus what I want to be in this deck. There's a lot that I want to be in this deck. Abrupt Decay, a spare Abrupt Decay if I had one. Assassin's Trophy. There's a lot of cheap removal. In fact, there was enough 2-drop removal in the original plan for this deck that I actually wanted to run Icecron Scepter, because there was just enough 2-drop instants that I would actually be able to probably do it. I would love to just slap that on a Abrupt Decay and just nuke every cheap thing on the board. So you're going to see a lot of this kind of stuff. Yeah, the instants and sorceries are where this deck kind of trips over its own 2 feet. Or it slithers over its own tail. I have a snake, and that never seems to bother him. So Casualties of War, as you've been staring at it. Choose one or more, destroy what's there. It's fun. It's useful. Gaze of Granite. I like doing this because it destroys a lot of stuff and leaves my gods. Putrefy, again, Abrupt Decay, Assassin. There's just cheaper stuff I'd rather run. Return to Nature. Basically naturalize, but with a little extra onto it. All right. I'm not going to argue. Golgari Charm. I like a lot of these Options, destroy enchantments, you know, -1/-1, or regenerate. Poison the Cup. I've kind of fallen in love with this as, you know, just the replacement to murder, you know, so. But again, there are 2 mana removal spells that I'd probably rather want in this deck now. Death Sprout. Again, you know, we've done this before. Destroy target creature, search for a basic land, or, you know. There are just cards that I want in here that I can't afford to get and put in this deck right now. Vorpal Sword. Oh, yeah, this is so overpriced and stupid, but I said if they're ideas that I put in this deck, and I said, this would be cool. This would be interesting to see what happens. That's really what this deck, at its heart, really is. It's a bunch of my random ideas that I'm trying to iron out into a solid Deathtouch deck. This is my newest stupid idea, as you can see, because it's just from Adventures in Forgotten Realms. But just giving something Phage... excuse me. Giving something +2/+0 in Deathtouch, and then turning into Phage the Untouchable, just... You know, for 1 mana, the +2 in Deathtouch was enough. So, but the rest is just... I hope I do that one day. Artifacts. As I'm slowly losing my voice. Soul Ring. You know, Skull Clamp, you know, getting a lot of 1/1 tokens and stuff, so... Again, drawing cards off that stuff is awesome. Jet Medallion. There's a bit more black than green in this deck. That's why I didn't run the Emerald Medallion instead. Because a lot of the bigger creatures, a lot of the 6-drops are black. And a lot of my instants and sorceries are just 1 black, 1 green, and stuff like that. Golgari Signet, really, really handy. Orochi Hatchery. At some point, I might take this out. I know I just don't have the ramp or the mana production to really get this going. I know that. I'm never flooded with mana in this deck. Originally, like I said, the curve was very small. I got by on that curve. This is a deck in an interesting state of transition, which is why one of the reasons I wanted to show it. I wanted to explain that this is like how my brain works. You know, one of the things about sharing my decks with you, maybe get you to understand like the way I do things. And this started off as a casual, fun, I'm going to base this off a God deck, turned into a, hey, how much Snake Tribal can I throw in here? And then here's this is a crazy idea. Here's that a crazy idea. And slowly it's turning into a juggernaut. So that is all I have for you guys tonight. We have one more Halloween video. Gotta figure out what to do until Crimson Vow comes out. You know, I did only planned up to Halloween, so stay tuned to my channel, guys. Thank you guys for watching, and this will be fun to see you guys next time. I'm really excited because that is one of the few decks that I have a lot of I take a lot of pride in my Rakdos deck. So thank you guys for joining me, and I am off to go find my frickin' Carnage Tyrant. Where the hell did that get to? Bye, guys.